All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. And as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD 1000 Web Development Technologies class, I am creating a series of video presentations based on the Mozilla Developer Network, or MDN, Learn Web Development Series. So far, I've gone through the getting started with the web, the HTML structuring the web, and I'm in the styling the web. And I've done the first steps, the building blocks, the styling text, and now we're into layout. And as you can see right here, this is one of the longer sections in this series. It's also, from what we've covered thus far, one of the more complex sections. So when you look through this, because I'm just right now, basically what they're saying here is we've talked about how to style text and how to manipulate different things, but it's time now to start talking about layouts. In other words, everything in CSS is in a box, but how do you put those boxes exactly where you want them on the screen? All right, so as it says, they will now delve deeper into CSS layout, looking at different display settings. And we're also going to go into two different things here, more than anything else, and that is Flexbox and CSS Grid. We'll talk about some other stuff, but I do want to mention that there is a guy named Wes Bose, Wes B-O-S, and he's got a couple. I've just started looking through them. So the first one here is What the Flexbox. It's a 20 course or 20 video thing on Flexbox. And they're not all, I think the longest video is 20 minutes maybe, but most of them are shorter than that. He's got one under flexbox.io. You just sign up for it by giving your email address. He's got another one on CSS Grid. So one of them is flexbox.io, and the other one is cssgrid.io. Both of these are free, and I'm going to give you time in class, maybe not to look at every one of them, but at least to get a start on each one of them. All right, but I would strongly suggest that you take some time and take a look at that. So if you look in here, and I'm not going to run through this much, this is just the intro, but as it says, all right, we're in the intro to CSS layout right now. All right, we will go into another introductory article, and notice what it says. It'll recap some of the features we've touched on and introduce some of the new stuff that'll be covered through here. Now, normal flow is basically the way things are going to be laid out on a page unless you tell it otherwise. And that's about as simple as I can make it. We're going to go into Flexbox. Flexbox pretty much is the way things are laid out typically using CSS today. And if you don't use Flexbox, then typically you use CSS Grid layout, or you use a combination of the two. You'll notice that Flexbox is one-dimensional. As it says, it's a one-dimensional way for laying out items in rows and columns, whereas CSS Grid is a two-dimensional layout system for the web. All right. Now, before we had Grid, before we had Flexbox, you did virtually everything using float property. And it's important to go over floats, not because they're used a lot today in new development, but in legacy development, they're all over the place. All right, positioning, as it says, it'll talk about different position values. All right, and as far as how you want to lay stuff out. Multiple column layout. Depending on what you're trying to do, that might be pretty simple, and it might be pretty complex. All right, and it says there they'll show you how you can lay out things more or less like they are laid out in a newspaper. Responsive design we've looked at before, and we're going to look at it in more depth and breadth of coverage right now. And again, the idea behind responsive design is that the web page will look good on virtually any medium that you're showing it on. All right. Beginner's Guide to Media Queries, again, something we've touched on. Media queries. All right. So for instance, if I've got this right here. If I start shrinking my screen size, notice what happens. See that what the flex box? Watch when it hits a certain point, how it gets small. There you go. And you can see how stuff has changed here. How about if we make it even smaller than that? Well, then it goes to a one single columnar format that's right here. All right, does it go any more than this? Look, doesn't look like, but you get the idea, hopefully. All right. Legacy layout methods, as it says, grid systems are commonly used today. Before that, you used floats and other things. All right. Well, it's important that you look at those other things because there's still a lot of legacy or older systems typically that are out there that aren't about to be changed just because of the fact that they still work. All right. And then we get into supporting older browsers. It says there will be visitors to your site who use older browsers or browsers that do not support methods you have used. This will always be the case. So this article explains how to use modern web design techniques without locking out people with older browsers. And finally, there is an assessment here, all right, down at the end. And as it says, there's a practical positioning examples that shows a bunch of examples on there. All right, so that's it as far as our layout overview. All right, so that's what we've gone through right now. So next, we are going to jump right in and have our introduction to CSS layout. I'll be back with that shortly.